So I have to tell you, you know what, and I'm not giving my response to Brendan here. For all I know, the piece he just did was a concession. Chael, you're the smartest guy in the room. I'm sorry I ever challenged you, which would be very appropriate by him. Good for him if he actually said that. But I have a feeling he did not. But I want to, I'll tell you this. It does still be interesting to me, and it seems like we keep getting in the same car and we just keep crashing over and over again. When I spoke out about Joe outing a guy, outing Colby Covington on a pay-per-view, Joe had responded on his podcast and said, yeah, but Chael went on his podcast. He discussed inside things in the business while saying that he was angry at me for discussing inside things in the business. And it appears that we're just not meeting there. We're just not understanding what each other's saying. If you want to go onto a podcast on your own time, where you're not collecting a check from the promoter and everybody isn't on the business, including Colby Covington, you're doing your own thing. That is significantly different than going out onto a pay-per-view and disclosing something. It is significantly different also because the hardcore fan who is going to go out and seek this kind of entertainment in between pay-per-views or shows, by example, in between fights, that just wants to hear commentary, get to know athletes, get to know some inside information. The kind of guy that's going to do that, that only represents 15% of the market. So if you're on a podcast and you're talking to those 15%, like I am with you guys, I can be extremely candid. I can be extremely open. I can reveal. And so can Joe and Brendan and other guys without creating any kind of hard feelings. That's a dialogue and a speculation, and you're on your own, and you're doing your own thing. It is different when you are all now partners and working together between the promoter, the commentator, and the athletes. You're all part of the business, and you're all scratching each other's backs. But far more relevant than that point, before that gets picked apart, far more relevant, is you are now dealing with the outsider, the 85% that's just the casual fan that comes along and tunes in for that night and may not be back the next night and then may come back somewhere down the road. A casual fan that drives the business. It is significantly different to reveal information to them in that setting than it is to go and do it on your podcast. It becomes interesting, though, and it starts to turn into a conversation that I'm a little annoyed to continue to have. Because I am left with the reality that you either get it or you don't, and if you don't, you're just not. You're just simply not going to get it. You're a worker or you're a mark. And in this sport, it is extremely unique. And I know Brendan, whenever I bring up these points, will often say, well, Chael always goes to the pro wrestling model. He loves pro wrestling so much. Like, no, man, I actually despise pro wrestling. They put out crap. It is a crappy product I have not watched since the 80s. I came back in the 90s for the Attitude Era, the Stone Cold and The Rock. That was in the 90s, man. That was decades ago. I absolutely do not love or watch pro wrestling, but I do like to use the example because their audience is so massive. And because the fact that they are not putting on a contest that is competitive, there is no struggle involved whatsoever. And they're selling out arenas larger than we do in mixed martial arts. I find it interesting. I find it very interesting, and I also find it very appropriate to always bring up the professional wrestling model, where you have an audience hooked on an emotion that will buy a T-shirt, a popcorn, set the event aside, bring the family out, leave excited or leave mad, leave with some kind of a strong feeling, all while watching something that they know is a pretend fight. And yet us in fighting, doing a real fight, can't bring in as big of an audience. I think that that's interesting. Hockey, when I was growing up, hockey is painfully boring for me. People love the sport. But when I was growing up and people would talk about hockey, always, anytime it was a water cooler conversation where people would come to school and be talking about it, whether it was in the classroom or on recess or on the bus, whenever I would hear about hockey, always, never in my life did I hear about a pass, a game, a score, a goal, an overtime situation. Never in my life. It was always about, yeah, this guy fought this guy. Oh, it was great. Their face mask came off, and they started fighting one another. Hockey was selling out, and I always found that to be really confusing. Okay, wait a second. From my understanding of this, the biggest hope in a hockey game is that a fist fight can break out. I can assure you, in our sport, now this was a different time. This was when the sport was trying to get off the ground. Now it is absolutely sold out arenas from coast to coast and international business every single week. And I understand that, but I am talking to you from a different time where I would always just find that very interesting that somebody would go to a hockey game, put up 4 hours of their life, hoping a fight would break out when I could guarantee them for the same price of admission that a fight will break out. Absolutely. 100%. In fact, 11 of them. 11 of them in one night's going to break out. But we were struggling to do the business that hockey was. I can remember times in football throughout my entire life when there would be a bench-clearing brawl. And, oh, my goodness, I mean, those would go viral, right? By the expression of viral when I was a kid before we had the internet and these different things, that just meant that everybody was talking about it. Every sports caster on the radio and every sports show, they'd be cutting that up. They'd be showing it 100 different times. And they still do to this day, including in Major League Baseball. If there is a bench clearing situation, they will show that. They will break in. That will be the news. And the commentators will all talk about how disgusting and how bad it is, but they will use it for ratings until they squeeze that lemon dry. Which I've always found confusing because we come from a sport where guaranteed you're going to see a fight break out, and that appears to be what people want to see. But we were struggling for attention. Now, I'm going back. We don't struggle for attention now. It's just the opposite. Now people struggle to get tickets. Now they're getting scalped. Now it is really big business, but I can remember a point in my life where that was interesting to me. So I do like to bring up the fact of the pro wrestling model when I'm speaking to the fact that it's about drawing an emotion, and the punches and the kicks aren't enough and haven't been for a very long time. I don't like getting locked in by Brendan or anybody else to, oh, Chael's just a huge pro wrestler. Man, that's not what it is. And the only reason I even bring that up is I find pro wrestling to be silly. I just don't want locked into that. I could use other examples. I could use an example for you. I just don't think it's as effective. But there's never been a script in the history of Hollywood where there isn't a guy in the white hat and a guy in the black hat. There is always a good guy and there is always a bad guy. And the only way you can get the person to come on and play the bad guy is to write the lines for him and then hand him a paycheck. Nobody wants to do it. Yet you can see from the world of entertainment that is absolutely necessary. It is absolutely necessary to the point that somebody will write it in the script or the script won't ever get made. There has to be a good and there has to be an evil. I think that pro wrestling puts that on display better than most other things do. So I like to use that as an example. But I feel that my arguments lose weight when the person I'm arguing, in this case Brendan, says he's a pro wrestling fan. So I'm just bringing that up. Or he loves pro wrestling. I'm just bringing that up. That I don't know that that's true. But the bigger topic is, though I am 100% right, 100, not even close. Not even a close second. It is hard for me to illustrate my point at times. And I will even see some fans weigh in and write in and go, well, Chael, how can you be mad at Rogan for outing a guy's industry secrets when you do the same thing on your podcast or you do it on your YouTube channel? Oh, my goodness. If you're not able to see the distinction between one is a podcast to the 15% of the hardcore fans, which represents you guys and me, we're all in this together, versus the 85% on a pay-per-view when we're all doing business together, I can't make you see it. And it's one of the things in the fight world. It creates tremendous opportunity for somebody like me. Tremendous opportunity. And I will use it. But it is also true that if you were to go through all of the people on the face of the earth that can promote combat, I don't think you're going to get to 10. In America, you have Scott Coker, you have Dana White. I think Oscar De La Hoya would certainly fit into that. Bob Arum, of course, would fit into that. Vince McMahon, whether it's competitive combat or not, certainly would fit into that. I'm at 5. Now you have to go outside of the country to see if you could find another 5. And you might be hard-pressed to do it. You might get there, but I think that 10 is a very good guess. And one of the reasons you can't just pass that to anybody, one of the reasons Vince McMahon cannot step down is other people don't know how to do it. There is no college in the world you can go to and major in fight promotion. There was no library on the face of the planet you can check out a book on fight promotion. You're either going to get it or you aren't. So when I come out and I give these teachings to somebody that are beyond reproach from a brilliant, brilliant mind, which is my own, as arrogant as that may sound, that is the reality of this. And it gets met with resistance. It isn't because the points can be picked apart, and it isn't because of the merits of the points. It is because it is a little more sophisticated than they're able to understand. And it's very tough even when you try to explain this to a fighter. And I've gone in these circles around and around and around. You'd be shocked how much my phone goes off when I get asked these questions, and I'm happy to answer them all. But I do find myself in the same car wrecking over and over again, which is just simply, okay, I'm not going to explain the psychology to you anymore. I'm going to write this out, go to your social media, and put it out. And even though you're never going to understand why, just do it. And that's the way that it ends up having to work. It's very tough to explain it to the guys, even within the pro wrestling business, which is solely that. That's why I love to use the example, because it's solely that. It's not about drop kicks and backdrops. It's not. It's purely the psychology business. And I don't think anywhere it's better on display. And even when you have those wrestlers that are in that business, some go to the top and some don't. Some still are in the gym working on their backdrop and their sunset flip and their elbow from the top rope. Those are the guys that are going to jerk the curtain so that The Rock and Stone Cold can come out at the end of the night. And some of them don't even understand what they don't understand. Some of them don't even understand, okay, I need to understand how to be a better worker. I need to understand how to evoke a pop and a reaction from this crowd. I need to focus my full attention on making sure when I come down the ramp on Monday Night Raw next week that somebody in that damn arena has a sign that they brought that has my name on it. And the guys that will understand those little things are going to be the guys that are the marquee guys. And the guys that are working on their figure four leg lock aren't. And some of them just go in the wrong direction because they don't even know. We're playing a different game. Right? We're just playing a different game. And guys get really, really confused by it. I'm stunned that nobody in the industry, zero people, have ever cracked the code on why the weigh-in has to go back to 4 o'clock. It's stunning to me. We have reporters in this space. Reporters in this space that have been here for 20 years. They haven't figured that one out. If they did, they'd have reported it by now. And they'd look like a genius. But they haven't figured it out. A different game is being played here. I see these kinds of things all the time. You've got to open your eyes and be able to understand that and find out what the game is. There are not very many people on the face of the earth that can promote mixed martial arts, and that is not going to change. You just simply don't. You either know how to do it or you don't, and it can't be taught to you. The same thing goes with being a worker or a mark, which is the same reason it's tough to continue this conversation, though I will have the last word on this. As many times as Brendan and or Joe come at me, I will have one more. I will not stop, but I will tell you it's a little bit tough. It's a part of this that I'm enjoying very much, but there's a part of this that, man, I just wish this would go away because we're just not there. We're just not on the same page. If you have to ask the question of why I can come on this podcast and reveal industry secrets while condemning that you do it on a pay-per-view, we're just not on the same page.